Good afternoon, folks. My name is Stephen Hill. I'm Senior Associate Director in the Office of Fellowships. I was a Fulbrighter myself in Tanzania in the 1990s, where I did ethnomusicological research. And we're going to talk today about the foundation of the Fulbright program, a little bit about its goals, and then we'll look at the kinds of projects that sort of make sense for Fulbright. I urge you strongly to break in with questions whenever you have them. Makes the whole thing go a lot more smoothly. But here we go. So Fulbright is an international program funded by the U.S. State Department. It is tenable in about 140 different countries. That changes every year for obvious reasons. I think last couple of years have been very strange in terms of where you can go and when you can get there. But we're hoping that this year things will be a lot more back to normal in terms of the possibilities. The Fulbright is founded on two main pillars. The first one is to provide opportunities for young Americans to take a next step forward, to do something interesting after they graduate, something that will hopefully lead to either career or research or a further study for them. It's not to have fun, although often it is quite a lot of fun, but you need to think about the ways that people in your discipline would think about a kind of project that you could do 9 or 10 months following graduation if you are an undergrad, or in graduate school if you're a grad student, that would set you up nicely for the next step, whatever that might be, or whatever you're anticipating for that. Now, I want to point out that I did not use a particular word when I was describing this first goal of Fulbright, and that word that I did not use was research, because approaching research as if it is always and only and ever sort of a very narrowly defined academic research kind of project is you're barking up the wrong tree. Feels like journalism, which do research certainly, but not the same kind of capital R research that involves sitting in archives and breeding dust mites. So it's more productive to think about what your field would recognize as an interesting next step for you. So that's the first thing that they do. The other thing that Fulbright does is it promotes mutual understanding. It is a mechanism for cultural exchange. They use education as cultural exchange, but they seek to provide for Americans, ideally Americans who've never spent much time overseas, provide for them an opportunity to really live, really work, really engage with people who are outside of your nation, outside of your state, outside of your town. And we're going to come back to that because it manifests itself in a very particular way with Fulbright, which I will predict for the vast majority of folks, this way that it manifests is easy to understand, but a little harder to actually engage with. We'll talk about that in a moment. So there are various types of projects that you can do with Fulbright. In broad brushstrokes, there are two tracks, and our process here at Northwestern reflects those two tracks. The one track is the English teaching assistantship, which is exactly what it sounds like. There's no need for a definition there. English teaching assistants go into a classroom abroad and they work for a year under the guidance of a lead teacher. And for people who have a background in teaching or a background in mentoring and goals or aspirations somewhere in education, this could be a really great option. My colleague, Amy Kehoe, is the one who manages that. We're not going to talk about ETAs anymore. Amy has a similar set of meetings like this where she talks about the ETA. If you're interested in that, you should contact her and get that scheduled. It's also up on Planet Purple. What I manage are the Study Research Awards. And Study Research Awards, again, are fairly straightforward. You can either go and study at one of 34 different countries in the world where you would go and enroll as a student. This is generally, it's not impossible for an enrolled graduate student to do that, but typically these are undergrads who will complete their undergraduate degree at Northwestern and then take that next step and go study there. Or to do research. And please remember that research is not capital R research, it's lowercase r research. It's what you would do in your field that would make sense. And therefore, people in the arts who are funded very, very robustly by Fulbright, they would end up doing things that would make sense for an artist, be it music or plastic arts or sculpture or whatever. Okay, so those are the two major routes you have to go down. Now with Fulbright, you can buy one lottery ticket per year, as in you apply for one project in one country in one type of Fulbright. You cannot apply for both a study research and an ETA, and you can't apply for Fulbrights in multiple countries. You get one shot at it, which might sound a little restrictive, but in fact, that's really good, because in order to succeed in Fulbright, you need to be focused, you need to be deep, and you need to really demonstrate your competence. And I suppose there are some geniuses out there who live in a frictionless world, but for everybody else, that just takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. And to do it properly for one country with one project is a tremendous achievement. At the bottom of page 1, the Critical Language Enhancement Awards. This is might seem a little odd because the number of countries and the number of languages is fairly restricted. It's only a handful, half a dozen or so. But why I include it is not because so many folks that apply for Fulbright from Northwestern are going to be eligible for the Critical Language Enhancement Award. It is to emphasize the importance of language to Fulbright. They think language is so important that they're willing to put some of their money behind increasing your linguistic skills. Now, if that sounds to you like an invitation to be blasé or uninterested or can't be bothered about your own language skills, then I haven't done a good job of communicating how important language is for Fulbright. And I'm going to return to that. Okay, so one of the things that you have to sign on for when you're thinking about Fulbright is wherever I am with my language, if it is not at the level of native proficiency, I'm not done. I could be really good, I could be the best in my class, but if I'm not at the level of native proficiency, I need to keep moving. Okay. Top of page 2 lists a couple of other types of awards. And one of the nice things about Fulbright is that each country can kind of shape and can kind of ask for and guide different kinds of projects. And you'll see that there are a fair number of those. The only way to know about what is available in your country is to go to that site, and hopefully you'll be pleasantly surprised by the specificity of some of the awards they're looking for. That said, everything that is listed here, arts, business, journalism, STEM, and public health, et cetera, all of those are tenable in any country. So the difference is some countries are saying, we really want people who are going to do STEM projects. We're going to sort of prioritize that. But you could do a STEM project in any other country in the world. And just between you and me, STEM projects are highly, highly desirable. Okay. Going on, Fulbright is not a development aid organization. Before I was a Fulbrighter in the 90s, I was a Peace Corps volunteer in the 80s. And so I understand that desire to affect some kind of social good, and I respect that and I honor it. However, if your goal is to go to a particular country and kind of do some project that will leave a lasting good or lasting benefit for the people of that country, great, join the Peace Corps or any number of other NGOs that could help you accomplish that. Fulbright is an intellectual project. They would be looking for you to carry out some kind of project that will, in heavy quotes, make contributions to generalizable knowledge. That's what academics are supposed to do. And so just keep that in mind in terms of thinking about your own motivations and your own goals for this. As you work through the process, if you elect to go forward, there'll be a lot of people who can kind of help you to either decide that Fulbright is not a good idea or to help you refine and pull together the kinds of projects that you can do with Fulbright that would make sense with Fulbright. Give me a second. We had a late joiner, if that's a word. So Julia, I'm going to share a document that we're using now. We're on the middle of page 2. So when you open that up, you can take a look and find out where we are. Fulbright's also not particularly easy. Was that a question? Are there questions? I mean, let me just sort of stop there and ask if there are questions or things you want me to cover in more detail. If not, I will press on. I'm sure there will be questions popping up towards the end here. Fulbright or no fellowship is particularly easy. If a Fulbright or if a fellowship sort of routinely funds 20 or 25% of all the people who apply, in my world, we get really excited about that because that's terrific. 17%, 16%, 15%, depending on the year. This is the national average for Fulbright overall for the last decade or so. Northwestern students are usually in the 20s in terms of their success ratio. So probably 1 in 4 of everybody here today is going to end up winning a Fulbright if you go forward. I would urge you to look at that with a little bit of subtlety, meaning you might think, oh, 1 in 4 chance, why should I bother? Let me make a pitch that I make all the time, in which I don't think anybody has ever really acted on, but it's true and you need to hear it anyway. Specifically, that the process of applying for something like the Fulbright is so clarifying and so helpful and really allows you to see in much greater detail what you want to do, how you want to get it done, what the value of your work or your process is going to be in the world. And even if you end up either not completing the Fulbright application or applying and not getting it, that step forward will help you in whatever you go for next, right? So essentially I'm saying, apply for Fulbright. It's really hard and really challenging, and you have to put a lot of work into it. And you might not get it, but it's good for you anyway. How convincing was that? But I wanted you to hear that because it's very, very true. So in the application process, starting early, I'm thrilled to see you here at the end of March because the deadline, which is coming up, well, the final deadline, the national deadline is October 11th. There will be deadlines before that. We'll cover that toward the end of the presentation. But the sort of the single thing that tilts the table in your favor in terms of success is for you to start early, to work through a lot of the more time-consuming pieces, and I'll talk about those in maybe more detail than you want, and so that you really have a good amount of time in order to develop your materials, and then more importantly, to get all of the supporting pieces in place. Our experience in this office is that for you to write a really strong proposal is not the hardest part of Fulbright. And I'll talk about some of the parts that I think are a little harder and take a little bit more time as we go forward. Eligibility, you have to be a U.S. citizen. You have to be a U.S. citizen at the date that you apply. So if you're in the naturalization process and you know you're not going to be a naturalized citizen by October 11th, 2022, then you will need to wait for the next cycle. Green card holders are not eligible. Sorry about that. You have to hold a bachelor's in your field in order to establish your skills, your talent, your ability to carry out the project. You must be, and this is top of 3, sufficiently proficient in the host country language to complete the project. Let me reiterate my belief that if you are not native fluent in the language, you should demonstrate your enthusiasm and interest and keep on working on it. And I know how gruesome it is to study languages. They can be fairly, kind of a drag. But for the Fulbright process, demonstrating your linguistic abilities and your ability to communicate and engage in the broadest possible way, highly desirable. You also have to be in good health. So the parts of the application, I'll go through them fairly quickly, but put out a bit of a teaser, maybe, or threat, depending on how you look at it. If you're going to go forward, I'd ask you to participate in an application workshop. These will start in the middle, more toward the end of April. And in the application workshops, I work with people who have more or less committed to this or are very serious about it. And we'll go through every single step of that application in great detail, and I will give you lots of good advice on how to do it. The goal is that when you're done with that workshop, you can start writing, right? Not just writing your essays. That's the easy part. I mean, completing the application form and understanding what each piece of the application form is all about. Okay, so look for those. They're all on Planet Purple now, and they'll be on our website as well. So the application form for today, I'm just going to say, be attentive, be complete, be neat, be tidy, don't leave anything unanswered. I know it sounds like I'm chiding a bunch of third graders, but a neat application matters. It does matter. The two next elements, the statement of grand purpose and the personal statement, these are your two essays. This is where you have the most control over your fate. So of course, you'll spend a lot of time on them. Statement of grand purpose, 2 pages, single space, 1-inch margins, 12-point font. Don't get cute. It is so abundantly clear when someone writes an essay based on the fallacy that if you put more words on the page, you're going to win. Nope. More words do not win. Better words win. And better words are always fewer words because you figured out what you're trying to say and you say it in the most effective and impactful manner. And when you're done, you stop. So the statement of grand purpose is where you describe what you're going to do with their money if they give it to you. And that's may sound a little smart alecky, but in fact, the entirety of all grant proposal essays is always, if you give me the money, here's what I'm going to do with it. And this is why it's an important thing to do. I've been doing this job for 20 years. That is the summation of my 20 years of knowledge right there. Okay. The personal statement, a little bit complicated in terms of what I'm going to suggest, so I'm not going to talk too much about that now. But I guess the most important thing you could do is to start either generating or maybe just polishing your anecdotes about how you started life way back in the old days, and through a series of happenstance or influences or people that you knew or classes you took or whatever, how did you get to where you are now? We call this your intellectual autobiography. And it's really quite important for folks who are deciding whether they're going to give you a whole bunch of money to get a sense of how your interest in the project developed. Because if they don't feel that you're really committed to it, it'd be harder for them to fund you. And so sort of telling that story, telling that autobiographical story, is really an important thing. The fourth item, the letter of affiliation from host country. The letter of affiliation is a letter written by, guess who? Your affiliate. That is someone in the country who writes this letter and basically says they got your back when you get there. I will talk a little bit more about this later on, but the identifying, cultivating, and maintaining your relationship with the affiliate for a lot of applicants is one of the longer, and it's usually very, very satisfying, but can be difficult at the beginning to sort of make those connections and get this moving forward. So the affiliation and securing that letter of affiliation, this is something that if you are serious about Fulbright, you need to start doing as soon as we are done here today. So by 5 o'clock, I want everybody who's serious to either pat themselves on the back because you already know who your affiliate's going to be and you're way ahead of the game, and just don't be so smug. But for everybody else, and I'm thinking this is 95% of us, if you know who your affiliate is, you need to start cranking on that. Cool. 5 is language evaluation. It's actually one of 2 language evaluations. You would do a self-evaluation, and I'll talk about that in more detail in the application workshops because there's an important component to that that is often misused. But the language evaluation will be carried out by someone who ideally is a teacher of that language. If the language is taught at Northwestern, that's it, that's your person. If the language is not taught at Northwestern, which is frankly fairly rare, you can identify a non-language professor at Northwestern and ask them to do this. And if you strike out on both of those, which is like once in 5 years this happens, then we can go to the city of Chicago and try to find somebody there, okay? But the language evaluation is really quite important. 3 letters of reference, they need to be technical letters. You might be a fabulous fellow and you might show up to work really, ready to go every day, but the letters need to be written by people who can assess the quality of your project, your training in terms of whether you're able to do this, and the significance of the project. And just for fun, Your letter of affiliation should cover those exact same things. So you need people who have demonstrable skill, demonstrable talent, demonstrable excellence in your field. They're the ones who will write the strong letters for you. Supplemental material record card only for people in the fine and applied arts, where you get a portfolio. If the field you choose or the discipline you choose on Fulbright does not allow a portfolio, then you do not get a chance to put one in. It's not your option, it's their option. But we can talk about that if you're in one of those fields. And then you have to have transcripts from all your post-secondary institutions. And let me stop there and ask if there are any questions or things you want me to cover in more detail. Yes, Mr. Devon.
Hi, yeah, so one question about the references is, can one of your references be your affiliate professor, wherever you're trying to go, or is that not possible?
Strictly, yes, in that the system would allow that. The person would probably have to have 2 email addresses, but it's really not a good idea because you want to demonstrate that you've got the widest, broadest possible support, not the narrowest possible support.
Gotcha.
So let the affiliate, and it sounds like you know the affiliate already and that person is well disposed towards saying nice things about you. A good letter of affiliation is in fact a 4th letter of recommendation.
Okay.
And let that letter of affiliation be that value added letter of
Yeah, so you're not repeating, yeah. Okay.
So you're not repeating, exactly.
Yeah, okay, sounds good.
What I just said to Devin is true for everybody else. If you establish your connection with your affiliate early and work with that person to develop the project so that it's not just interesting to you, but also feasible in the country where you're going, I mean, let that sink in. Your affiliate can help you make an interesting project a much more feasible project, right? I hope that makes perfect sense. If that person works with you deeply, they will almost certainly become quite engaged and involved in your success, and therefore their letter of affiliation, which can be quite terse, their letter of affiliation can transform into a letter of recommendation, and that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Cool.
Thank you. Yep, thank you.
Good. One other thing about letters of affiliations, they do not all have to come from Northwestern professors. And in some instances, you don't want that, particularly if you're like an early stage graduate student. Neither do they have to come from only from academics, right? If your project is such that a non-academic career that you may have pursued for a couple of years between, well, whenever, if that person is able to assess the quality of the project, your training for the project, and the significance of the project, they don't have to be an academic. You know, shockingly, some people who aren't academics actually know things. So I've heard. We have a lot of support here at Northwestern. We have these application workshops that I alluded to. The FFA, Fulbright Faculty Advisor, is somebody that we will assign to you. Fulbright Faculty Advisor kind of plays the role of a general member of a Fulbright selection committee. Let me do a small sidebar. You apply October 11th, hit that submit button, your application goes to Fulbright. They take it and they will have it read by one of usually 70 or 80 different national selection committees. The national selection committees are made up of folks in the US, either US scholars or in some instances, foreign scholars from the country who volunteer to do this. They will read your materials and they will make a decision. The decision is either thumbs up, you will go forward in the competition, or thumbs down, you should try again next year. If you go forward, then what happens is your application is sent to the country or region to which you are applying. It will be read there by experts, some usually academics, sometimes some business people, sometimes folks from the government. If there are US scholars, Fulbrighters in the country, they will always be asked to read your materials as well. But as they go through this process, they will give you the decision. Congratulations, we're going to offer you the Fulbright. Sorry, you're not being offered a Fulbright this year, or, well, we're going to put you on the wait list. You're an alternate. And we're actually in that process right now, where we're starting to hear from the applicants who applied in October of 2021. They are now getting the final disposition of their application if they made it that far. The point being that everybody who reads your application after it leads to Northwestern is going to be an expert in that country. They will know the country quite well, but they will not necessarily be an expert in your field. And in fact, you should not anticipate that there will be any experts in your field on the panel, which means that your writing style needs to be towards an intellectual person of goodwill, right? A general academic, somebody who cares enough to volunteer and read a whole bunch of these things, but isn't necessarily knowledgeable or invested in all the little fights and the little stuff and the details and all of the technical language or the jargon in your field. Our FFA plays the role of that person. So if you take your proposal to your advisor in your field and they say, this is great, but my person reads it and says, I have no idea what you're talking about, you got a problem and you got to fix that, because it's going to be people like these FFAs or somebody like me who will read your materials and they have to understand it and get excited by it. Otherwise, no funding. Is that cool? So we take care of that. I just want to give you a sense of where that person fits in. You should work with people in your field without a doubt, but you also need to think about the Fulbright as you're really talking to a general intellectual audience, not experts in your field. The Office of Fellowships, my office is here all summer. We answer lots of questions. I will set up a Canvas site where we'll have a discussion board. We have past winning proposals and statements. Our office is open and you can come in and take a look at the archives. I talked about the Canvas site. I have newsletters that go out over the summer. In September, we have application reviews. That's where you will submit your materials. That'll be the Tuesday after Memorial Day. Submit what you have at that time. And then I think it's the 19th to the 23rd that week. You will have a 20 to 30-minute session with 2 or 3 faculty members. They've read your materials and they're going to give you advice on how to make it better. So it's this feedback loop that is the only thing that really works for refining and polishing your materials. That's going to happen in September. And I guess the kind of the final things I want to say are really quickly, language is super duper important. I hope I've convinced you of that. The letter of affiliation is really important as well. And then the third thing is to embrace the importance of Fulbright as a cultural exchange mechanism. One of the essays, a short essay that you will have to complete, is called Host Country Engagement. And I just want to soften you up that for Fulbright, who you are and what you do when you're not on the job, when you're not being a student, when you're not showing the world that you're the hardest working student ever created, that's important to them. And so think about what you do that brings some joy, brings some lightness, brings some excitement to your life. And kind of the farther what that other thing is, the farther it is from your project, kind of the better, because it shows breadth. Fulbright wants to send smart people, without a doubt. They want to send hardworking people, without a doubt, but they want to send interesting people who have interesting pursuits outside of their research. Okay, I'm going to predict that for 90% or more, that's going to be challenging. To go from look at me and how smart I am, look at this project, it's really great, to, and I also like to, well, I'm a blacksmith. Okay, Devin?
Yeah, that point is making me think, because I mean, of course, I'm interested in the country's culture that I want to go to, but
Sure.
It's very hard for me. Yeah, I've written like essays for like language programs before and stuff, and every time it's kind of hard for me to express my interest in the country without it sounding sort of like cliche. You know, like,
Right.
oh, I love cultural exchange. I
Right.
love learning about other people. It's like, well, yeah, everybody does. And,
Sure.
you know, so, I mean, I'm not requiring that you have an answer, but if you have any tips, you know, about that, definitely.
It is so easy except also so difficult. What do you do in your free time?
Mostly music and learning languages.
Playing music?
Playing music, yeah.
What do you play?
Piano.
Piano. And in what style or what genre?
Mostly jazz.
Okay, so wherever you go, do you think there's a possibility you could join a musical ensemble?
Definitely, yeah.
Boom, done.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Cool. All right.
See
Yeah.
see how easy that was? And that's
Yeah,
and
okay.
why I say that, and I don't mean to
Yeah.
be well, I do mean to be smart aleck, but I want it to be an engaging smart aleckiness, is that like who you are and like what matters to you in your private life and your personal life. 99% of the time, you can actually articulate that. You can engage in whatever country you're going to in a very similar way with, guess who? People just like you in that country. And this forms a second set of connections.
Right,
And
right.
that's really the value added. You go there to do your project, you've got your affiliate, there's probably other people in the technical field or the intellectual field where you're working, and you'll make contacts there. And those contacts ideally will be durable, and you will have them for years and years, and you will do projects in the future in your field. Yay, that's great. Okay. Fulbright wants to know what else, what other contacts are you going to make? How are you going to make durable relationships with people in this country that will last after you have come home, so that your engagement with the country is on two fronts: the intellectual front where you do your work, and the personal front where you actually live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've always worried about balancing like the, emphasizing the academic things I've done with balancing, the personal interest in the place, and saying the interest in the place without making it sound like, well, I only want this fellowship because I want to go there. I
Right.
think, but I think from what you're saying, like it's good to focus on that. For example, in like the personal statement, is that right?
Typically in the personal statement, but there's also a box. There's the three boxes, three short essays. And one of those asked you very specifically, and this is foreshadowing of the application workshops. They use the terms, you, friend, are a cultural ambassador. And what are you going to do outside the workplace? That's the way Fulbright looks at you. You are a cultural ambassador. We want to know how you're going to engage in this country outside the workplace.
Okay,
Right?
cool. All right. So there's a very specific place to say it.
There's a very specific place to say it, and I think they're quite clear in their terms of their prompt. It's just that a lot of times our head gets in the way of just reading what they say and doing what they say. Okay, let's go quickly to the penultimate page here. This is the one with the timeline on. Competition opens tomorrow. They're gonna release the application tomorrow. I will go to a meeting on Friday that sort of introduces the Fulbright competition. Between, I think it's April 30th. Does it say there? I actually don't know, to be honest. I don't know when my first application workshop is, but that's kind of the next thing in our process. Attend an application workshop, begin your Fulbright application. You can do that tomorrow. You could do it and complete it tomorrow if you wanted to, but you might want to work on it a little more than that. September 6th is the Tuesday after Memorial Day. That's when we have our campus deadline. I need your entire application at that time. All right, now let's get real. It's highly likely that one or more of your recommenders is not going to get their letter in basically 5 weeks before the Fulbright deadline. I'm going to guess that might not happen. You might also not have your letter of affiliation. So what I really mean is I want all of the materials over which you have total control, your essays, the application form filled out completely and neatly and thoroughly, and your transcripts. All of that stuff has to be in, because if my committee has a slack kind of half filled out application, they're not going to be able to do a very good job, right? So September 6th, 12 o'clock noon, I need your stuff. September 19th to the 23rd, those are the application reviews. You'll get one session with the faculty members, and they'll talk to you about what you need to do. October 7th is, that's the deadline by which I want you to submit everything and be done with it, okay? We have a few things that we have to do on our side, and I kind of need your complete application before our piece can really get done. And then Tuesday, October 11th, typically it is 5 o'clock Eastern time, 4 o'clock our time, but they haven't announced that yet. But you'll keep an eye on that. Tuesday 11th is when the final application is due, and congratulations. Hope everybody goes forward, and I'd be very happy to answer any questions.
So sorry, just to clarify, if we were to apply this round, then it wouldn't start until the next fall of 2023, right?
Exactly, right. So an application in the fall of 2022 puts you on an airplane in September of 2023. With the exception of some school systems that begin in our winter, this is the Southern Hemisphere usually. If you are thinking about some countries in South Africa, I'm sorry, in South America, when the school year begins in January, February, for those folks, you might actually be waiting until January, February 2024. I know, but that's the way it is. Anything else, Camila?
No.
Okay.
Is there any way to like, has anyone ever like talked about like starting it earlier, or is that?
No.
Just because I'm hoping to graduate next year and I should have applied last year, but COVID and stuff.
Right.
But okay, so like
for Fulbright, early might be August.
Okay.
But if you apply in October of 2022, there's like June of 2023, no, that ain't gonna happen, right? July, boy, I've never heard of that. August may be more like September, October.
Cool, thank you.
Miguel?
Yeah, hi. I had a question in regards to the cultural exchange aspect of the application. I'm a dual citizen here in the States and also in Mexico, and I have all my family in Mexico. Is that something that should be mentioned as far as like, what do I do outside of, the expertise that I'm interested in or the project that I'm interested in? Would you encourage that, or would you encourage more of like my own personal pursuits?
Right. Your first step needs to be to see whether Mexico allows dual citizens to apply. In some countries, it's not a problem. In other countries, it is a problem. And so that may be a red line and you're done if you want to go to Mexico. Once you establish that you are eligible because of the dual citizenship thing, then I think it's a really good idea to downplay any familial connections you have there. There's a kind of Fulbright applicant that we get with some regularity, and it's heartwarming but completely ineffective. And that's what we call the heritage applicant, who wants to go lay flowers on grandma's grave and explore their heritage and find out where their mom and dad met and fell in love and all this other kind of stuff, which are marvelous, marvelous motivations for going somewhere. They're just not fundable by Fulbright. So if you do have, and this is for anybody, if you do have contacts, if you do have family in a particular country, it is absolutely imperative that you use those contacts to identify an affiliate, to gain much more nuanced knowledge of the country, to make your project seem very, very fitting for that country. But to say, hey, I was talking with my aunt the other day and she says blah, 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 so I want to go do this. No. So the personal journey of exploration argument, do not waste any words on that, nor sort of saying, like, hey, you want to fund me because my aunt's got me all set up and I'm ready to go. That's also not terribly desirable. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Certainly. You can pop your questions in the chat if you wish.
A question on the timeline. So if I were to apply for a program and I would want it to start in like October of 2024, because the program's on October, would I have to apply like March of my junior year. I am currently a second year student. So if I want to do like 2024, I'd have to apply March of 2023.
So if we're talking about the application to the program to the university, that's kind of their own business. What is important sort of in our discussion of Fulbright is that Fulbright has one application deadline a year. It has been for the last decade, the second Tuesday in October, and hitting that deadline will set you up to begin the following academic year. So if the country has an academic year like we have in the U.S. that begins in September, October, then you would need to gain admittance into the program such that, well, and this is where things get a little bit weird, because the Fulbright application deadline comes well before many application deadlines for admittance into university programs, and it 99.999% of the time comes before you would even know whether you're in the program or not. That's why for folks who are applying to a program, your affiliate really, really, really needs to be the person in that program with whom you intend to do research. And they can't promise you that you will be admitted because they don't know the strength of the applicant pool for that year, but they basically need to say, well, this young person is really exactly the kind of person we're looking for, and I really am looking forward to working with her on this great research project that she has developed. Okay, I realize I have not answered your question thoroughly, but I think the answer is apply for Fulbright if you're interested in starting the program in 2024, you would apply for Fulbright in 2023, apply for the program in whatever their timeline is, maybe late 2023, early 2024, gain admittance at whatever their thing is in 2024. Hopefully the Fulbright comes in and you're ready to rock and roll. And then in September, you get on an airplane and you go and have a great time.
Okay, perfect. That answers my question. Thank you.
Good. Yeah. Sorry, that was a little little circuitous, but that's the way I roll. Question: have you had people with more archival related specializations find Fulbright opportunities at all if it involved working with researchers in the host country? So in that case, the archival work, it is highly, highly, highly desirable if the materials in the archives are available only in that country. With the digitization of so much material now, it has actually, depressed the need for folks to actually go overseas. There are arguments that can be made that you need to actually physically handle documents that may be printed, like James Joyce's original drafts of Ulysses, because you're looking for marginalia and things like that. That can always work. But the folks who work in archives typically are graduate students, not always, but often graduate students. And the role of the affiliate is in most cases to be advisorial. So that person says, I'll be happy to have a conversation with Avi, twice a month, where I will evaluate his progress and point him in new directions. And they're basically a sounding board, if that makes sense. Okay. Letter of Rex and affiliation. Is English the only language acceptable at the time of submission? Well, you ultimately need to have a version of the document in English. For Mexico, you are asked to and you might have to check me on this, but I believe you take your 2-page statement of grand purpose and then do a 1-page summary of it in Spanish. Okay, so for Mexico, they really want evidence that your written Spanish is tolerable, right? That you have this document in English and you're able to condense and write it in the local language. To the specific question, it is not impossible, but it would be a little odd that one of your US-based recommenders would not write their letter in English, but it's possible that they wouldn't. It is often a good idea for you to ask your affiliate, that is the person in the country, to write the letter in the language of that country and then translate it. Because that shows them what a boss you are when it comes to language. So if you have the opportunity, you've got the skills to get a letter in the host country language and then bang out a killer translation and append that to the letter and says, by the way, here's my translation of the letter. That's a great thing. That is a boss move. And I hope you're able to do that or are getting to the point where you're able to do that.